So I had asked Councillor McCafferty to chair the meeting because we didn't have a chairperson and vice chairperson yet. But unless there's anyone with a last minute nomination, I only had 2 nominations for the role of chair, which was from Michelle and Karen. So there wasn't anyone else. I think you've all had your chance to speak. So I emailed them yesterday and just said, you've both been nominated. What would you like to do? Do you want to put it to a vote? And Michelle very graciously has said that she would be happy to be vice chair if Karen's happy to be chair again. So Karen has accepted the role, and therefore Karen is our new chairperson again.
Yes.
So congratulations, Karen and Michelle.
Thank you, and thank you to Michelle too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll hand over to you, Karen.
Oh, and I'm not really prepared for this.
Well, I can help if you need.
Okay, so where are we at? Okay, so I think we'll start the meeting with going around the Zoom so that people have got 3 minutes just to talk a bit, introduce themselves, and is there anything further, Virginia, that we're doing here? Or
yeah, I might just explain. So in where we're at now with the disability inclusion plan, it's coming up towards the end of its 4-year cycle, and we need to develop a new one for next year. And since we've got a new committee and new people that haven't been on the committee before, I thought it would just be a good opportunity to introduce. Oh, hi, John. There you are.
Yeah.
Welcome. It would be great if you wouldn't mind, and sorry for putting you on the spot. If you can't think of anything, that's fine. We can come back another time. But I've got an issues log on a spreadsheet where we've started to try and record things that come up so that we don't miss them. So if you've got anything in your mind today, or that you've come to the meeting thinking, oh, I'd really like to discuss X, if we could record some of that now, and then we can consider it for the development of the next disability inclusion plan, or it might be something we're already doing and we can say, yes, that's happening here, or we can address it however it needs to be addressed. But I just thought it's always a jam-packed meeting with lots of stuff on the agenda, so getting your 2 cents in can sometimes be difficult. So there's a chance to do that now, but we'll make sure that there's more chances to do that in the future as well. And if I could pick on someone, Mary.
Okay.
One of our 2 new recruits, and Simon, you're our other new recruit. Hello. I'll get you to introduce yourself in a minute. But Mary, you asked for something to be added to the agenda, and I thought maybe you could talk about it in this.
Yeah, yes, I do actually. I want to talk about the All Disabilities Day.
Yeah, so do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, okay. From each year, sometimes from the Moreland to Peninsula, always put on a really good event. Like we have Lions Club who does the barbecue, or different kinds of sports. You know, we had cricket or basketball, footballers, or people who come along and get celebrated with people with disability.
This is on usually around the 3rd of December for International Day of People with Disability.
Yes, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know if, because we normally do that at the Mornington Rec Centre with Belgravia, have you heard anything from Belgravia if they're planning to do an event this year, Mary?
Don't know.
Okay. The reason I thought it would be good to just flag as something to consider, to discuss a little bit now and maybe down the track, is that, like you said, every year there's been a sort of come and try sports day, but maybe this committee might be interested in doing something a little bit different this year, perhaps. If we've got
something different would be wonderful. Yeah, something different would be a lovely idea. We can't do the same old things all the time, but it would be nice to add in new things as well.
Yeah, or that event could still happen, and we might look at something as well.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so I've written that down on the issues log, and we don't need to talk about it just in detail right now, but
Yeah.
I think it's something that's good to flag, that it's around the 3rd of December, and maybe we'd like to do something as a committee or with the council in the future. Yeah. All right, Karen, do you want to go around the rest of the room?
Oh, okay, no worries. I'll go from who I'm seeing from left to right. So Ben, are you able to introduce yourself and provide an issue, please?
An issue? Ooh, I don't have any issues. Hi, my name is Ben. I am the manager for a disability employment service provider in Frankston. I look after the ESA, which is a service area for those contracted to provide employment services. So my contract is the long and short-term disabilities, covering anything from, mental health, anxiety, generalized anxiety, all the way up to cerebral palsy and the whole gambit in between. So I live on the peninsula. I live in Hastings. My son has type 1 diabetes. He's 15. And yeah, I guess my main focus here, or my biggest issue, I guess, is the whole transport, which is on the list, I think, for today anyway. So yeah, hello everybody.
Thanks, Ben, and welcome.
Thank you.
Next, I can see Sandra.
Hello, my name is Sandra Orlish. I am very happy to be on the committee. What I would like to see is a much more unified people, the whole peninsula, and the universal plan in place as quickly as it possibly can be for accessibility, you name it, across the peninsula, that makes it for everybody, not just for the able body. That's my main point that I want to champion, I guess. I loathe seeing inequality. I'm involved in the arts and I'm really happy to be on the committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra, and welcome.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Simon.
Hi, I'm new to this. I was introduced by Virginia because I wrote an email requesting improved access to the beach down at Balnarring Beach, because I'd been having trouble getting across the sand on my mobility scooter, even though I had tried to modify it with bigger and off-road tires and stuff. Anyway, I've contacted the ranger, and it must have been passed on. That's how I've become involved. I've got a physical disability. It's all a muscle weakness type disability that I was born with, and yeah, I thought I'd try and make my own life a bit easier when I visit the beach, but also I thought that it would be an improvement for other people of all with their varying abilities, and so that's how I've got involved. So this is my first meeting. I don't really know what to expect, but I thought I'd be involved and offer what I can in terms of thoughts and ideas, and I guess that's it.
Thanks, Simon. Karen, maybe if we could just ask, for the purposes of the brand new people, so we haven't had a proper DAC meeting with all of us before. Would the new people mind putting up your hand just so we know who you are? Okay, so just so you feel a bit more at home there, Simon, you're not the only one.
You're in good company being new, Simon.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll probably then start with the new people and then move over to the returning members. So Sally.
Hi. I live in Mornington and I am the mum of a special little 10-year-old. I have a few different interests with regard to this group, but one of the main ones is providing access to communication for everyone. Everyone has a right to communicate. So looking at ways to bring that into the community, provide access. And I'm really interested to hear more about what Mary's saying about the All Abilities Day. I've not really found that very easy to access. So I'm interested in looking at different things there as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Sally. It's been a long day already. Claire.
Sorry, pardon me, just taking myself off mute. Hi, everybody, I'm Claire. I live in Flinders. I provide support to family members, and I'm acutely aware of how inaccessible my immediate environment is. We only have a couple of buses to town, and we don't have any buses on the weekend, and most people who've got mobility issues can't catch the bus. My dad can't catch the bus anymore, and getting to the beach is near impossible. So so I'm acutely aware of how inaccessible my environment is beyond my very accessible house. I joined the committee because I also have a very long history in disability advocacy and policy making. And I suppose my issue, I think maybe you'd asked me last week, might be different from today, but yesterday I worked for the state government and the Department of Education. I was involved in a discussion about the state disability plan yesterday. I won't reveal anything about it, but I think I do have moments where my head either explodes or I engage in trying to find the best Groundhog Day emoji or, GIF that I can send to somebody who might actually laugh as well. But it actually is no laughing matter. And I was part of the development of the very first state disability plan, which has a human rights framework, and an enormous amount of effort went into developing that first plan. I was involved in the last state plan, and 20 years later, listening to another version of a new state plan admiring the same problems that we talked about 20 years ago with not being further down the track, I think has just reignited a fire in my belly again. And I understand the constraints of trying to get plans written and then to get them actioned. But I suppose I just want to implore this committee that if we embark on any kind of planning, that what we have in mind is some really significant change that's going to make a difference to people who can't make it around easily around this beautiful part of the world or feel left out. Whether you're young or old or anywhere in between, and understand that 20 years ago, the last state disability plan was based on a framework of human rights. There are human rights in place. There's a convention in place. These are not things that we should be begging for or asking for or politely standing around waiting to happen. They just should be here. So that's my little spiel for today. So I suppose it comes down to, if we pick a couple of things that we think are actually going to change, that would be fantastic.
Thanks, Claire. I hear you on that whole state disability plan thing. Debbie.
Claire, your passion and longevity of working towards this is amazing. Great to hear. So you're a hard act to follow, I've got to say. I'm Debbie Allum. I work for the Brotherhood of St Lawrence in the NDIS area, and I live in Mount Martha. So I live and work on the Mornington Peninsula, and I have worked with people with a disability for most of the last 30 years, and have some family and friends with a disability. The Brotherhood of St Lawrence are considered a partner in the community with the government agency of the NDIA to roll out the NDIS. So my desire to be on this working committee is so that I can learn and try and work out how we can influence the work we do in the Brotherhood of St Lawrence with the NDIS to improve the way we do things, and also to see what partnerships, what we can do together with the Shire and with the DAC to improve things. And I also have, in terms of issues, one of my concerns is how people with a mental illness or a psychiatric disability are able to access community and feel connected with community and feel valued as equally contributing members as other people without a disability is. And I'm not quite sure how that issue becomes an action, but it is something that I think is hard and would be good for us to look at as to what we can do differently.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
John.
Karen, look, I've been on the committee a couple of years. My real passions are in the sports and recreation area. I play sport in the Peninsula, and I also involved as a spectator, and I do a lot of pushing along the walking trails, and I'm keen. That's my passion is that opens up and is as accessible as possible. And I've also got a big interest in the public transport section, and I've had some. I'm a member of the All Aboard, which is a disability public transport forum. They're sort of main interest, but I've got a general interest in anything that can improve the situation. I worked for a while as a disability access consultant after I finished my job in sport.
Thanks, John. Back. Michelle. Michelle, you're still on mute.
I think I would know by now after Zooms. I was just going to say I think it's really heartening to hear the reasons why people are on DAC, and I think it's going to be an absolutely terrific year for getting things done. I mean, my own reasons for being here is I've been a long-term advocate for equity. And that's sort of then translated into, you might have seen sort of the slogan saying a foreshore for all, not just sort of able-bodied. And that now, as you learn as you go, is why, again, there's been strong advocacy or energy put into universal design, because it means that it is inclusion and access for all. And inclusion, I guess, is the key word. So I think it's just going to be a great year for seeing all those things happen. And in terms of actual things I'd like to see, I think the disability inclusion plan probably needs a very, very strong review this year. And I think, the committee has a big role in that, because just with the changes that have occurred over the last few years, it may mean that we're looking at a different type of plan that actually is more aligned to where council's going, so we're more embedded in council processes and can make those changes, those necessary changes. I mean, there's been an example just recently of in Blairgowrie, there's been a sort of change to a recreational area, and we've had a long battle with trying to get picnic furniture that is universally designed, and we thought we'd won that battle, particularly at Rye. When you look at that furniture in Blairgowrie, you think, my God, we've got nowhere. There's just the assumption that there's going to be perhaps two people in wheelchairs sitting either end, but the rest of the design is just totally inappropriate for universal design. So there's things where we need to educate, I suppose, and that's enough from me at the moment.
Thanks, Michelle. Belinda.
So I'm Belinda Rodman. This would be my 4th year on the committee, but basically I'm just in a sort of transition role. When there was the plan to recruit new members for the committee, I sort of felt that it was probably time for me to start to move on. So I'm around to help mentor anyone or support anyone sort of over the next couple of months. So if any of you have any questions and you need some time to discuss something with somebody outside of the committee situation, I'm very available. My background is in sort of business and human resources, and I ran a small business on the peninsula for quite a long time. My connection from the disability side of things is that I have a son who was born hearing, but then had meningitis when he was 3 and became profoundly deaf. He has ended up actually being pretty successful, and I'm always very proud to tell everyone that he actually ended up becoming a commercial pilot, the first person with a cochlear implant to do so in Australia and possibly the world. So I understand also that obviously his pathway has been a lot different to a lot of other people who have disabilities. So it's given me perhaps a different perspective on things. But having said all of that, it's also really motivated me to try to do whatever I could to ensure that other people have as many opportunities as they can. So what I've tried to contribute over the last few years to the committee is perhaps that sort of business perspective and strategic perspective. As the existing and previous members know, I'm hugely impatient for things to change. And that has been quite a challenge for me, frankly, working, with this sort of in the Shire environment, because often things do take a long time. But what's been fantastic is that the committee has been steadily working away, and I've seen a huge amount of change has occurred from the time when I started, where basically it was a box ticking exercise when we were consulted about anything. And although there's still a lot of room for improvement, things really have moved from that point. And we now have a really strong connection with members of several of the teams. And despite the kind of situation that Michelle's just described, which can be hugely frustrating, we also have seen quite a lot of success. And I think one of the key things recently has been this sort of push towards looking at universal design as being actually implemented potentially across all plans and all processes in the Shire, and that sort of is all underway right now. But I'm very, very optimistic that that will make an enormous difference going forward. So I wish all of you all the best. I'm here for another couple of months. I'm helping with the transition and also with the Accessible Grant Program, which we're going to talk about in a bit. And anyway, that's another really positive outcome of the work of the committee.
Thanks, Belinda. And finally, we have Lorraine.
Oh, it took me a minute to realise I needed to take it off, put it back on unmute, sorry. Yes, I'm a delegate from the Peninsula Advisory Committee for Elders, so we call ourselves PACE. And I've been involved for a few years now as a delegate to DAC. And I'm just listening to everything that's been said today, and I'm reflecting on the work that PACE do. I think there's a lot of areas that overlap, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But if we're sharing a bit about ourselves, I'm a retired social worker, and I've worked in the areas of disability, mental health as a clinician. I've worked in the areas as a counsellor advocate for family violence and sexual abuse. I don't know if I said I worked in intellectual disability as well, but we've been retired for a few years now. I'm also a carer of an adult child with a disability. I also have another adult child with a disability who lives independently with support. And I'm also now a carer for another person, an adult family member. So pretty busy in those areas, but still very keen to look at the inequity that we have in these areas and how they might be addressed. I can't do it all, but and that's hard for me because I want to be involved, but nevertheless, I won't go on with that. I'll talk a little bit about what some of the areas that PACE are working on at the moment, and this one is continuing and ongoing. So elder abuse, and intimate partner abuse. We're doing more work lately with Peninsula Health around that, but our aim is to get out into the community as we've done before and do the community education. Obviously with COVID, we've been a bit limited around that. We've been advocating too for better bus services on the peninsula, and yes, it's looking likely that we're going to get that bus that'll actually go to the Frankston Hospital. Acknowledge there's problems there because of the route that the bus is taking, and I won't go into that right now. Where I'm just about to, with some other members of the committee, to look at the plans for the retirement village in Jackson's Road in Mount Eliza. And yes, to look at what needs to happen for older people in what they need in such a village, so to make recommendations. So that's one of the other things we're doing. We're not doing our Pace on Air at the moment, hopefully. So that's our radio program. Hopefully we'll do that soon. We're involved in a lot of forums and surveys around aged. We've also been advocating with Belgravia because there's been an issue there where they cancelled the Living Longer, Living Stronger program, which was an exercise program particularly for older people, and how what they put in place is not safe for us. So we're doing some lobbying around that. We're very interested in the ideas of access, social justice, universal design, those things that DAC are working on. And we're looking at how we might work together with DAC on those things. So that's a work in progress, and looks like some of the things that DAC are working on at the moment, we may be able to get involved in at some stage. And that's the reason that I'm actually a delegate to the committee. So we're hoping that we can work collaboratively together for the benefit not only of people with disability, their carers as well, and older people. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorraine. I guess I should tell you a bit about myself as well. So I'm an accountant. I've had a lifelong disability. I thought it was muscular dystrophy, but I found out in the last 10 years that it was central core disease, but I think they all are pretty similar when your muscles just deteriorate. 8 years ago, I spent 13 weeks in a nursing home after I had a fall and could not walk again, and that's sort of like inspired my advocacy pathway. I realised that I was deserving and that other people who were in that nursing home did not deserve to be in there, and therefore I kind of had that realisation of societal responsibility and things like that. And I've been a strong advocate for more accessible housing. One of the things that I wanted to do when I could no longer walk was find a way to access the beach, and that's been something that I've managed to do in the last couple of years, but that's been a long process as well to get more accessible beaches. I think what I'd like to see happening for the DAC is to take a very strategic approach and to work on the policies and the strategies that need to be implemented in order to ensure that we all live on a more accessible Mornington Peninsula, because I don't think that it's working very well at the moment. So I think that there's a lot of work that we need to do to feed into that and change the way things are done. Okay. Now I've got to find the agenda again.
We've got a couple of shy people. Adrian, do you just want to really briefly say who you are and what your role is at the Shire?
Hi, excuse me. Hi, Virginia. Hello, everyone. Thanks. I work in the Shire. I live in Rye. I work as an infrastructure planner, particularly placemaking, which is a process which is community at the heart of everything we do, designed for the people to be inclusive, safe, comfortable and accessible. A strong advocate for inclusive design, crime prevention design, safer places, and also sit on the Positive Ageing Steering Committee. I have family and friends and lived experience of access challenges and issues. So I'm here to try and influence as much as possible through championing within the Shire to put a lens on inclusive design access for all, equity and comfort.
Yep.
Thanks, Adrian. Who else have we got here? We're about to get.
Sorry, I'm going to put Councillor Mercurio on the spot if he's there too. Hello.
Hello, sorry. G'day everyone. Firstly, Kerry McCafferty sends her apologies. Councillor McCafferty, she's unable to make it today. Had a sick child for the last couple of days. I don't really want to talk about me, really. I'm a new councillor and going through various amount of challenges as a councillor and working out how it all works. I'm on a couple of delegations, and I've got to say this one is without doubt the most impressive. The work, I hear some of you say, you know, yeah, not enough's been done, you need to do more, there's lots of problems, but from my point of view, for attending a few meetings over the last few months, I think you guys are just awesome. The work you do, the commitment, the dedication, the care, the knowledge. Yeah, I'm really so grateful that you're around, and very, very impressed. And I know there's a bunch of you that are new, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do. Lorraine, you sound way too busy to be even here. Look, I guess I'm here to, as a councillor, to listen, etc., and to help where I can. I'm still sort of learning the ropes, but I'm here to support you as best I can. And I wasn't going to say much, and I think I've said enough.
Thanks, Paul. And I think that we've had Andrew just enter the meeting. So, welcome.
Yeah, hi Karen, apologies, I'm late.
It's okay. So we've just been around the Zoom and introduced ourselves. So would you like to tell us a bit about your role with Council?
I can, yeah, thank you. So I'm Andrew, many people know me as AJ, and I'm Team Leader of Community Wellbeing here at the Shire. So work alongside Virginia and others, and yeah, just really excited to be here. I've been at the Shire for 15 years, so I've been in this role for 6 months. So I was previous to this role Team Leader of Youth Services. So within this portfolio, we look after gender equality in our diverse communities, the ageing well strategy, and health and wellbeing as well. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thanks. Okay, where are we? The next item, accessible business grants. Virginia, you sent out an update on that. Do you want to give us an update on where we're at with that?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad we've made such good time. No, I didn't know how long that was going to take. So those of you that got a chance to read what I sent out yesterday, apologies, I didn't get a lot of time. So Karen and the DAC put a budget bid in, what, 18 months ago now for, I think you requested $20,000 initially.
25 was.
Well, in the formal application it says 20, but council awarded 25.
Oh, okay, no, it was 20.
Yeah, yeah, which is good. And so towards the end of last year, it took a while, but started developing some guidelines and a process, which were completed in sort of March this year. And I took them to exec because we've got a policy that we have to follow. We've got to develop the guidelines, take them back to exec and council for them to give you the nod, and then you put it out to the community. I got to the exec meeting on the 12th of April, I think, or May, can't remember. And they said, this is great, we're fully supportive, but we've got this other bucket of money in the next year's budget and we want to give you some more money. So hold off and we'll put you together with what's happening in that space. And AJ's a part of this, working on, so there's $2 million in the next financial year's budget, not for accessible businesses, but that 25K is going up to 50. And there's going to be a number of other business grants, community grants, a whole range of things that are currently being developed at the moment. Because the accessible business one is ready to go, I'm hopeful that we'll be allowed to run with that sooner rather than later, but I just have to wait for the economic development team to decide how they want to do that. Yeah, and if there's 6 business grants, can businesses maybe only apply for a couple of them? So there's logistics like that need to be figured out. So in the meantime, we were going to run an event to launch this and give businesses a couple of case studies and have a few business owners talk about what they've done in their space. Instead of that, we've now changed tack a little bit. We're going to make a video and also develop a guide or a checklist. And there's lots of other examples from other councils of developing the same sort of checklist, which I've done a bit of a scan off, looked at maybe 15 or so different ones, and a lot of them all stem from the same one that was developed in New South Wales many years ago. So we sort of don't have to reinvent the wheel, but I did want some help from the committee to decide on a couple of things. So there's, with the grants, the video, the checklist or guide, and also the Best Bites program, which has been running for maybe 8 or 10 years now, a long time, that Belinda's on the committee of, and she can speak more to that. Sort of want to make sure that the messaging through all of those is consistent and we're using similar language around, whether it's what other councils have used, which is good access is good business, or if we want to sort of come up with our own branding for that. And I'm not asking that we decide on it right now, but there's going to be a bit of work to do to refine the guide and also to make the video. So I've engaged a videographer called Ryan Smith, who is a wheelchair user himself, and he's done some really great videos for Parks Victoria about accessible features of some of our state parks. So he's happy to work with us and be guided by us, but at least he's got lots of experience sort of in this space. So I guess I'm looking for any initial thoughts on what I've sort of shared with you so far, and then potentially interest from any of you to be on a bit of a working group to develop those resources. Sandra and Kelly.
With that increased amount of money from 25 to 50 in the accessible business grant, would it be allocated in small amounts?
The idea is to do 2 rounds of 25, and the maximum amount per business would be $5,000, but we might give smaller amounts. And we would hopefully learn from any mistakes, which I'm sure we'll make in the first round. We can improve on for the second round.
Thank you.
You made a statement that this is part of a 2 million development.
A recovery fund.
Right. Is there any way outside of the 50 grand allocated for these particular accessible business grants that the rest of the 2 million could have a component of universal design in part of their application, so that there'd be 50 grand very specifically, but that all grants contributed to the Shire's
universal plan,
universal design?
Yeah. So when I went to the executive with just my little grant, that was something that the directors all said as well, that they want to see access or UD embedded across all grants. But I might let AJ respond to that as well, because he's in the communities space and we've got some other.
Yeah, thanks, Fee. And yeah, that definitely came through strongly from our executive, our senior leadership team, to embed that in our grant processes. In relation to the $2 million and how that's going to be split specific to grants, there's a variety of different grant streams that are being considered. So there's going to be ones that are targeted specifically to service providers that are doing work alongside council in supporting our vulnerable communities. There's also money specific to placemaking and building capacity of our community to deliver initiatives and programs themselves. So the actual, I guess, criteria hasn't actually been developed yet. It's still really early days. but it's imperative to have those considerations. So yeah, the comments that you've made, we'll definitely take those with us when we have those further discussions.
Can I just make a couple of comments? Because I was in a discussion about this with Virginia and Catherine Cooper a few days ago, looking at it from the promotion of the grants through the Best Bites program, because that is to those participants, and most of those are sort of small businesses, mostly in hospitality and retail. But there were just a couple of things which I thought needed to be kept in perspective in terms of how this rolls out from the DAC's perspective. And that is that, firstly, we've got this additional money and it's now part of this major recovery process, which, you know, has a lot of opportunities, because it can then be really shown as an opportunity for these businesses to implement things that will help them to recover after all of the impacts of COVID. And these small businesses in general are struggling. A lot of them are sort of on the knife edge as in terms of whether they can keep going into the future. And so having something that we can promote as being a way to increase their customer base by making their place more accessible to people with disabilities, their families, their carers, it's a large potential customer expansion opportunity. So I think that's really key. My concern, and this is just because I'm on the board of a community centre on the Southern Peninsula and do a lot of work in the grant application area, and I'm just very aware that small organisations and often owner-run businesses have really limited time and resources to put in grant applications. So I was saying to Virginia the other day, I think it's just vitally important that whatever the process is, if it's really, really streamlined, and if they're going to be applying for several grants, that somehow that can be kind of integrated so they don't have to do a lot of repetition of application, and that our grant through the DAC is actually seen as a really key critical one, because suddenly if they're going to get maybe 10,000 for some other recovery initiative, they'll probably go for that rather than necessarily looking at doing something in terms of improving access and inclusion, just because of the time and the resources that's involved. So just something to consider going forward.
Yeah, good points. Michelle's had her hand up. Michelle, you're still on mute.
I agree with what Belinda's saying too, in terms of people's time, because what often happens with grants is that they're all advertised at the same time. So I think it needs to be very strategically worked out when is the most appropriate time, not just bundle them all up and throw them out there for people to then pick and choose. So that particularly with these grants, people don't choose those because there's another grant that's got a higher amount of money and something that they know more about. The other point I was going to make is the most obvious place to put universal design is in the placemaking grants. And I think that to embed it in that would be a very good start, even if it's trickier with some of the other grants. But placemaking is the most obvious. Because I think the Blackberry bit might have been a placemaking grant. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adrian, but I've got a feeling it was. So thank you.
Yes, Sally?
Sorry if Virginia already said this, but with the video, how is it being communicated? How's it getting out there? Where's it going?
So good question. We're working with the Economic Development and Tourism team, and they've got the MPB online website, which has also got an email database of all the businesses on the peninsula, and they do blogs and yeah, so they've got a number of different communication channels. So I guess social media will be one of those as well.
Okay.
But if you've got any other ideas, Keen to
This
hear
is,
that.
I had no idea. I just was curious.
Yeah, and then another good idea was, so some of the businesses might be using another service to help improve their accessibility, like a website developer, for example, or communication access. So letting those services know about the grants so they could even maybe offer or assist those businesses to apply for them, because they'll benefit from them as well.
Is it going on our website?
Yeah, we'll have a centralized page. And I've actually got someone helping me. She was going to join us at 2 because I had this scheduled for 2:10. Her name's Raz, so she might come in, and we've already had this conversation. But anyway, I can get her up to speed.
Okay. Are there any other questions or points that people want to make?
Just one. With announcing these grants, are you hopeful that one business will apply for multiple grants? And if they do, how will you stop them? I just find if you allow people to have a whole lot of money and multiple lump sums of money, when they've got an idea in their mind, it might not necessarily come out in the end as it was designed to. How can we prevent that?
So there's only been one meeting of all the business grant people and one of the communities one, but we have had that discussion a little bit. We've raised it as a problem that we don't want businesses applying for more than, say, 2 out of the 6 grants, but we also have to be really careful about communicating that. And if the accessible one comes out, we sort of have to let people know there's also going to be these other grants, and if you apply for this one, you might not be able to apply for those ones. So it is really tricky. So we have to think about how we're going to do that in a fair way.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's Adrian here. I sit on and have sat on for several years some of the assessment panels for the grants, and there's pretty strong selection criteria around it. There's fairness. There's a panel that actually gets together and looks across it and gives them ratings and so forth, and our governance team. And someone specifically last year was rewriting a lot of the governance framework to make sure that it's transparent, as fair as possible, and I suppose covers, as what Virginia mentioned, a level of fairness so we can spread the load across as many organisations or community groups applying for grants instead of just 1 or 2 that are really good at grant writing. Often sometimes get more grants, but at the same time, it's an education piece, which Virginia has mentioned, as a communication piece, getting out to as much as the community as wide as possible. So it sounds like that the comms team and Virginia have been working quite closely on that. So I won't enter into that until 2:10, I think.
But yeah, just to that point as well, Adrian, the community grants, usually if you've already received council funding in the last 2 years, or it might even be more than that, you can't receive another grant for a certain period of time. So yeah, it'll be similar to that probably in some respects.
So, oh, sorry, yeah, go Michelle.
I was just going to ask the question, is there value, I mean, apart from the extra $25,000, in these particular grants being tied into an economic recovery grant process? Because
that's pretty much what this is.
That's, yeah. But that's why I'm asking the question. I mean, is it better to separate out the grants so that people aren't caught between choosing that these are sort of an opportunity to make your business more inclusive? So it's not really related to economic recovery, is it? I mean, or is it a trade-off that if we do that, then we don't get the extra 25,000? I don't know. I'm just throwing that into the mix.
There's a bit of an overflow as well, Michelle.
Yep.
In regards to the business, obviously being able to do improvements, but also providing support to the local builders and things like that. It's got, I suppose, various overflow effects or positives to go into the community as well.
Yeah.
And it is a generous amount of money, but at the same time, there's a lot of businesses, as we know, that are suffering and struggling and need a leg up. So trying to be fair, I suppose, is spreading as much as that across as many. And universal design and upgrades to access and ramps and things in some of the old shops that could, get a better access, that will be a bonus. And it might be something that probably will be teased out through, I suppose, the assessment process, and probably a little bit more that the businesses will know where they'll probably be able to get their success. And then it comes back to that education piece of saying this inclusive design or these grants are available to allow these to occur, and hopefully being able to respond as a business to those as well.
I guess that's what concerns me is that this will be looked at as a bonus, and that choices will be made for the other grants over making a business more inclusive or for doing things. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think it's something we need to consider.
And Michelle, if I can respond to that, I agree with your concern, and I'm still yet to clarify. I think the 50 grand is a recovery amount, and then I'm hopeful that we'll still have at least 25 in future years. So I sort of need to clarify whether the accessible business grants are seen as a one-off, like the rest of that recovery money, or if there's an intention for them to continue. So I'll be asking that. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Claire.
Yeah, look, I'm interested to know whether you know what can be purchased for $5,000, and whether because when I think of $5,000, it can do a bit of a path, or it could provide money for a design for something actually much more extensive. But it won't actually produce something. And then there's a whole range of people can get quite creative with $5,000 and get something that's worth about $1,000 but bring in $5,000. So having managed grant processes before, I'm speaking from experience. So I wonder whether you had something in mind, because now we're sort of talking about what is going to be value for money. And if in fact there are X amount of properties in the Mornington Peninsula Shire or shops that are completely inaccessible for people who use mobility devices or have limited mobility, is it money just better spent targeted on trying to upgrade a whole bunch of places that people can't get into? I don't know. I'm wondering whether you've got a better sense of what's going to give us value for money for $5,000.
Karen, do you want to speak to that first?
That's what I've been asking that question of Virginia, is that what are the changes that can be made for $5,000? Do we actually know what the costs and processes are involved in, like, for instance, making your website more accessible? What is the process and what's that end cost? So that we want to focus on getting outcomes. And that is my concern, is that I don't think that there's been enough research into what it would cost to get a ramp. I agree that you might need an access audit or something of the premises, which would cost I don't know what, and then you may need architect fees to get that drawn up, and then you may need the actual builder. So I think it's trying to understand what is the process involved in getting places to be more accessible, and we don't want it to be just ramps, but we also need to know what else the money can be spent on, because it's not a small sum of money.
I mean, we had that discussion, didn't we, about 1,000 flowers blooming by offering small grants or going for projects that we said, yes, we've got this bucket of money of $25,000, putting your proposals so that there was no limit, and so the selection was on those proposals that were going to have the most impact. So it just gets tricky. Do you sort of encourage a whole lot of people, or do at the end of the day you just pick 2 or 3 where you actually can make a big difference and that they act as exemplars for ongoing grants?
Simon?
Yeah, my question is sort of, if you were imagining you're a business owner, you're not familiar with any of the disability requirements, or people would need to be taught what it is that they need in order to then know what it is they want to apply to install, and then give a process or a guidance for them to know how to get from that idea to actually finishing. Like it would seem like too complicated, I would imagine, and people may not follow through or get beyond the idea of, oh, that sounds like something I'd like to be part of, and then actually putting it in process. Like who do you contact to get a design, and who do you like? What is it that you need? And like, I just it may need to be made, like given a set of instructions for people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can I just answer that in a way, Simon? So that is one of the reasons that we have got this connection with the Best Bites committee, because the Best Bites.
I'm not familiar with what Best Bites is. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. So that's a committee that's been running, as I think Virginia said before, I think it's been about 10 years or something. So it's basically a sort of an awards program that is run for businesses that have some kind of connection, maybe with the food industry on the peninsula. So it's they can apply to have awards across 5 different categories. So including food safety and sustainability, etc. And one of them is access and inclusion. And so I've actually been the DAC representative on that Best Bites committee for the last year or so. And so as part of, and it's only certain businesses that do actually participate in Best Bites, but it has been growing over time. And so they actually have a set of criteria that they are then assessed on. And the idea with this sort of integration with the grants program is that we would look as part of that sort of assessment program, the people doing the judging on the access and inclusion part could actually make suggestions to the participants to say, well, look, this is something that's come out of your assessment. This is an area that perhaps you might need to think about improving through staff training, in customer service, or it might be that there's something that you can do about your website, or there might be something that you can do about perhaps making the place less noisy, or, you know, and maybe those things won't be managed by a $5,000 grant, but at least it's that sort of, it's a start. It's identifying some opportunities to improve access and inclusion. So I don't know if that helps, but that's the sort of background to it. Yep.
Sandra, did you have your hand up?
Sandra, you had your hand up.
Well, it brings Simon and Belinda's comment, and also Andrew, bring me back to who will be assessing all of this information in the Shire? Is it
At the moment, the assessment panel is looking at being made up of Belinda, Karen, myself, and a man called Peter O'Brien, who works for the Environment Protection Unit and developed the Best Bites program.
Thank you.
Dee's just arrived. Welcome, Dee, and I'll take John's question and then we'll introduce Dee. Thanks, John.
I just wanted to make a comment about Best Bites. I did some of the assessments with Best Bites, and I found the cafe owners and that were very to any suggestion to making places more accessible, and I found it very genuine. Those that were on the list were really keen to make their places, you know, highly accessible, and even just little things like the toilet, that there was no colour contrast, the toilet seat with the toilet, or just little things like that, or you know, they were always on board. I found the ones that made the list were 100% with you.
Sorry, what was that last thing you said, John? Once you've what?
Their project work.
Sorry, John, your internet connection seems to be fading out with your
voice.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay. just don't use Optus.
We heard that.
Yeah. Do you want
Sorry.
to repeat that section again that you just stated at the end, John?
I said that the cafe owners that I assessed were on board with making their places, highly accessible.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
Is there anyone else with their hand up that wants to add a question?
I just wanted to reply to those concerns around the how as well. This is the idea behind developing a guide or a checklist where we can point to places to find assistance or how to do things. And those have been developed by lots of other councils, and I can send you all the links to various ones. But yeah, I agree that information needs to be provided alongside the grant with examples so that businesses know what we're talking about.
And that they understand what the process involved is. I think that might, as Belinda said, like people are under a lot of stress. They don't have perhaps the capacity to write a detailed grant. They might not know what the processes are involved, as Simon has said. So I think we need to kind of understand that a bit ourselves, because I think you're going to be inundated with a few queries around that. And also, I think that it's really important that any businesses that are there to be showcasing accessibility, we need to ensure that they are best practice, or what they're saying is in line with the messaging that the DAC wants out there. So I think that sometimes a lot of businesses get put forward and applauded for their accessibility, but unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't really translate into great functionality, and that there's still a lot of work that could be done to improve their accessibility. Mary,
yeah.
Mary, have you got your hand up? I can't quite tell.
No.
Okay. Adrian?
Thanks, Karen. The Shire has in the past ran grant writing workshops for the community, a few of those of how to apply and how to write the grants and background. It's probably worth a check-in for us to see if that's something that is possible and will happen here. And obviously we've got the COVID restrictions at the moment, but they have run them in the past and they've been well sought after, and they run them at various locations for the community grants and placemaking grants.
Okay.
I think there's plans.
Adrian, I think that's a great idea, but again, it just goes back to my point that for the small business owner who currently is, running around like a chook without a head, trying to keep their business going, we need to make the process as simple as possible. And the thought of someone having to attend a workshop to find out how to write the grant to access $5,000, I think there are a lot of business owners, unfortunately, but it's the reality. I think they're going to say, woof, way too hard, so I don't know how we work around that.
I understand. We give as much information and step through the process, but there's an avenue to upskill and capacity build. And as we know, we've all written federal, state, or a lot of us federal, state and local government grant applications. They are pretty lengthy, at times a bit confusing, but to make it as user-friendly and accessible to all, I think that's the primary gain. And there might be an opportunity to have a quick glance at it. I'm not sure, Virginia, to see, to kind
of. Okay, thanks. I'm going to let Dee ask a question, and then I'm going to introduce Raz and move to the next stage, and because we might have opportunity to ask a few more questions around the grant. So Dee.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I finally have a car so I can go to work tomorrow. Much serious apologies. I just had a thought, taking in mind the idea of doing like an online the business training, and then taking into consideration business owners that don't have a lot of time. What if it was pre-recorded so that they could have a look at it when they've got some downtime, so they could still learn how to do the access for the grant, but in a time that would work around their commitments with their businesses?
Do you mean the instructions on how to do the grant was pre-recorded?
Yeah. So kind of like almost like a webinar, for want of a better word, whether they can then just go on and click on and download the information or see the information when they've got the time to do it, or if they've got the time to do it.
Shire actually have a grant writing person that could assist businesses at this time? I mean, I would have thought that would be part of the whole recovery thing, is to helping businesses access grants.
Yeah, we do have one in the community space, and I think there's a resource going to be added for this $2 million to support the admin and backup for, and inquiries for the new grants as well.
Okay. So let's introduce Raz, and Virginia, can you please do that for me?
Well, Raz, you can introduce yourself if you want.
I have met some of you. My name is Raz. I work at the Shire as a health and wellbeing officer. I'll be helping Virginia with the Accessible Business Grant. So just trying to jump into this meeting and see what your thoughts are.
Thanks, Raz. And apologies, we started a bit before you came in because we were ahead of schedule.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. But I
meeting.
guess, what I'd like out of this, as well as the really helpful thoughts you've already added, is, I guess we are planning to make a video and some instructions or a checklist or whatever you think is necessary. It'd be great to know if anyone's interested in helping Raz and I work on that. And what would be involved is probably a meeting in about 2 weeks' time with the videographer, and then starting to put things together in terms of what information exactly it is that we want to be giving to businesses and what research. I mean, I've already started looking into, what it might cost to get your website made more accessible and other places that businesses can go. So if anyone's interested in helping us with that, I'd love to know.
Yeah, I'll be on it.
So is that then, if people, can they let you know by email, or are you allowed to call somebody in to help you or anything like that?
Why not?
Cheers, thank you.
Michelle, well, this is not a business that stands to benefit, I suppose.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
Michelle, you had your hand up, did you?
No. Oh, you're on mute, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm just happy to help. I mean, I've written multiple grants, so I'm fairly experienced in that line.
Thank you. Anyone else at this point? That's all right.
Much help I'll be, but I'm happy to put my hand up if you think I can help in any way.
Okay, cool. And we can bring back drafts to the whole committee to show you where we're at.
I can help you.
Sally? Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking the timing of this, I can't see the grant being ready to go out before August. So we'll have a month or two to work on it all. Okay. Claire?
Oh, sorry, Virginia, I just want to ask, and to what extent does it also include being, sorry, that's a barking dog, the employment of people with a disability?
Yeah.
Where does that fit in? Creating businesses that create employment opportunities.
I think that needs to be part of what businesses can apply for. Absolutely. So, yeah, it would be good to maybe get some input from Ben at some point. I don't think we're going to be able to list your particular employment service specifically, but whether there's like a central, I mean, I usually point people towards Job Access and pages like that around advice on employing people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's Job Access, Job Seeker, the .gov.au site. There's a whole heap of them.
Yeah.
But isn't it about perhaps accommodating people with a disability so that your workplace actually is fit for purpose? I mean, I think with the grants, just thinking again of the grants.
A lot of, and I'm hearing a lot of what everyone's saying. It's like, the business owners and council and things like that. And it's like, sometimes I have to shake my head and go, just walk the walk and talk the talk. We can say that we want this ramp, but do you hire anybody do you employ somebody that perhaps uses a wheelchair? Or can you actually say, yeah, I've got 3 staff members in the warehouse that have all got X, Y, and Z? you know, not that you need to know specifics, but sometimes I do get a little frustrated, you know, on my little exercises around town about, you know, why would I do that? Why would I hire somebody with a disability? Well,
maybe this is, Ben, where you say because they're more resilient, they take less 6 days, they are more reliable.
Indeed, Day, and we say that's part of, you know me, you know the companies that we work for, you know how we do it, and that's all well and good, but some people aren't like that.
Maybe if we start with the ones that are open to it and word of mouth,
indeed, yes,
their business increases, their profits increase.
Yep.
They'll find a reason to jump on board.
They will, yeah. But it's finding those ones, and there are plenty out there. We all know them. We both, you know, we have access to people that know people that have those kind of connections. You know, it's what we do. The 10,272 people on the peninsula that are looking for work at the moment that all have disabilities, and that's just what's listed for providers.
Wow.
Yeah,
can I quote that number? What was it? 10,272.
I'll give you the exact number.
Is that including
10,277 people. So that's Frankston down.
Wow.
And that's just registered job seekers.
Ben, can I just clarify? Are you meaning people? There's that many people seeking employment who have a disability?
Correct.
Right. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ben, do you have any examples of good businesses that are inclusive that might be willing to participate in, say, a video or?
I probably do. I would have to have a look at my lists of what, you know, I'll have to have a look at the placements that, you know, this site has made in the last 6 months and see who we can contact, and I can certainly make sure that ideally, obviously, I want to keep it peninsula based. Unfortunately, some of ours are Carrum Downs, Frankston, Dandenong. So if I've got somebody south of that, I'll hound them. I've got a few, and they're all really good people. They just want to help out, and they needed, you know, and that's what we do. But yeah, I'll make a list and send it through.
That would be amazing. Thank you, because that's sort of what we're looking for the video.
Yep.
Claire? Okay.
I just think of two businesses that I support because of how accessible they are. At Merrick's General Store and Benton and Rise Farm Gate.
Okay.
Both are excellent.
Great.
Well, from my point of view, you might ask their workers and they might have a different view, but from outside looking in, they're both very proactive businesses.
I think it's really important to get some examples that support what Dee was outlining before. So you actually get someone in that business who is actually prepared to say, well, this has actually been the benefit to my business. So yes, it was the right thing to do, but actually from a business perspective, because as much as it is a human right, and you know, we all want the right thing to happen, and all it unfortunately a lot of the time it ends up coming down to what's actually going to be best for the development and profitability of my business. And if you can have that direct link, I think with this kind of grant to businesses and the target that we have, it's actually showing all of those things that Dee was saying, increase in profitability, longevity of staff, and all of that kind of thing. I think if we can find businesses that are prepared to actually show the benefit specifically to them, I think that will be a really strong case to make.
Yeah, great. Karen, did you have any suggestions, just while Raz is sort of here listening, because she's going to be the one following up with them? I think I've asked you this question before, but
what, some businesses or some
businesses that you think would be worthy of showcasing?
I love St Andrew's Beach Brewery, but I understand that that's new and it's kind of accessible because it has to meet code and all that kind of thing. I think Belinda was talking about Western Port Hotel a few years ago in the Best Bite. Did you do some judging over there and they put ramps in and made it more accessible? Do you recall that?
So it's not the Western Port Hotel. I'm trying to think. It's the place down sort of on the foreshore there. Is it called the Western Port Hotel? I've forgotten now. What was it, John? Do you remember?
Marina.
The Marina Tavern or something.
A marina, okay.
Yeah. So
Marina.
that's actually that. Yes, and that was they got an award, I think. Not the top award overall for Best Bites, but certainly for sort of innovation and improvement a couple of years ago. And definitely they ended up, interestingly, because they were actually renting the property, because that's one of the other things that comes up all the time when you deal with business owners about accessibility issues, particularly in terms of actual access off the street and things like that, that if they're renting the premises, which most of them do, what capacity they have to actually make those adaptations if the owner of the premises is not prepared to put the funding in. So that was a very interesting case where this particular business was actually renting the premises, but actually was able to convince the owner that it was worth the owner putting the money in to actually do some renovations, which has made it much more accessible and has increased the customer base, definitely. So yeah, it's a great outcome. Yeah.
So that's the kind of story you want in your video, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So what was that business? Sorry, Belinda.
Oh,
I think it's Western Port Marina. Is that correct?
Look, I've got it somewhere. I'll have to dig it out. It was a couple of years ago. I apologise. Memory's going. Yeah.
That's fine. Just yeah, send an email.
Yeah.
Okay. It is called the Western Port Marina.
Okay.
And sorry, Marina Restaurant and Lounge Bar.
Marina Restaurant and Lounge Bar. Amazing.
And that apparently it's for sale. So I don't know if that helps or hurts. I do apologise. I do have to leave. But thank you for having me for a while.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Well, what I suggest is if anyone can think of a business that they think would be a great candidate for the video, we can email Virginia and she can pass it on to you, Raz.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I want to thank Raz for joining us, and I think that I want to ask people, do they want a 5-minute break before we resume, or yes?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do a 5-minute break and we'll be back shortly. So let's make it 2:31. No, sorry, 2:26. 2:26. Oh,
thanks,
great.
Karen.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Virginia, oh, she's gone.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, no, that's all right. I did the interview.
Oh, well done.
So she's going to let me know. She's going to put it together before she puts it onto the Shire Facebook to have a look at. But I'm stoked.
I thought you meant the other interview. You mean
no, not the other one. No. It doesn't come up until after the 23rd of June is the closure date for that one. No, I did the one for the Shire on Autism Pride Day for tomorrow.
Yay.
So yeah, I was really stoked. And I did mention when I was chatting about the power of the DAC and helping to make it accessible on the peninsula as well and opening it up to other people. So yeah, I said thank you for the Shire for being proactive in the space of changing places as well as the natural environment that we have. So
yeah, we need to do more in the autism space though. So we
I was so stoked that she said, I just want a couple of sentences. And I said, I haven't prepared anything. Can I just maybe talk and you pick out what you think is relevant? And she goes, yep, no worries. So
I'm sure you would have had plenty of relevant things to say.
Oh, well, she'll pick out what she wants out of it. But yeah,
right.
I'm stoked I got to do something in that space. And I've mentioned the Peninsula Autism Friendship Group as well.
Okay, great.
Which is a private group for people with autism. And it's not just mums of kids with autism. It is people or families who have autism or support people with autism.
Great.
Yeah, so hopefully that will raise the profile of that too, because once you've got autism and you know about these things, like anything in day services, it just opens up. I mean, in disability services, it opens up.
Yeah.
It was, having the courage to actually reach out and say, hey, I have autism too. And they're
Yeah,
like, oh, don't worry about it. I teach at rah, rah, rah school and I still eat chocolate. I still do this when the kids aren't looking. I'm like, oh, cool.
Oh, that's funny.
So
Hey, I'm
you.
just going to duck to the loo really quickly.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah.
See you in a second. How you going, Mary?
Oh, thanks, Virginia.
How you finding the meeting?
Really good.
Oh, that's good.
Very good. I like it.
You've got a blanket on there. Is it a bit chilly at your place?
Oh, no, not very much. It's just like a little cardigan. It used to be my mum's.
Nice. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, sometimes it does get cold here sometimes.
Yeah.
We could be forgiven for thinking we were living in the Arctic over the last week or two.
It's really gotten cold, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes cold, not always. Sometimes it's quite warm sometimes. When you're outside, it's warm, but when you're inside, it's really warm.
The sunshine.
No, yeah, when you're outside, it's really warm, but when you're back inside, it's really cold. Yeah.
Just looking, nearly everyone's back. We'll just wait another second or two. I don't know how, haven't been able to confirm this, but apparently AstraZeneca is now aimed for people over the age of 60. So.
Yeah. saw that
I
headline
had my
pop up.
second Pfizer this morning.
Oh, good on you.
Good things come to those who wait. So I've been putting off because I didn't want the AZ. So now I'm going to get the Pfizer.
I had my first AstraZeneca about a month before they changed the recommendations. So I presume
Right.
I have the second dose of the same one. I don't think they're.
Yeah, they haven't changed that yet. Yeah.
I'm 39, so I'm well below the recommended age, but I don't think they give you the different one.
Yeah, they do. Apparently, you can have both.
Now, or are they doing that later?
Oh, there are people getting it now. You know, the ABC Radio National, there's a show called Coronacast, which is like a
Norman Swan.
And so, yeah, I've listened to, yeah, exactly. I've listened to a few of those, and they talked about people who've had both, and it's meant to actually provide better cover.
Ooh.
So maybe you could explore that.
Okay, I think nearly everyone's back, are they? Just waiting for people. Okay, I think we'll make a start. So next item on the agenda is the universal design. So we'll start with Virginia, and has she got any feedback on the manager interviews that have just been undertaken?
Look, I'm just going to double check my emails, but as of 1 o'clock this afternoon, I hadn't heard back as to whether they'd been included or not. So AJ and I might follow up on that question. Yeah.
You're sharing your screen. Is that deliberate?
Oh, am I?
Well, someone is, not me.
Sandra.
Oh, I can't turn it off.
Sandra.
Sorry. How do I turn it off?
Down the bottom, there should be a little thing that says stop sharing. I wonder if I can knock you off.
Yeah, do that.
Stop participant sharing. There we go. Look at that. So much power in my hand. So, yeah, I'll put that as an action in the minutes. Yeah. Sorry about that. And then the conference. Sorry.
Yeah, the conference. So last month, just before the lockdown 4.0, Virginia, Linda and I attended the Universal Design Conference at the Melbourne Showgrounds. And I think you'll agree it was a really interesting conference. And I think that, do you want to share some feedback, Virginia, or do you want Belinda and I to do it first and then?
If you go first, and then I might just quickly run through a couple of things.
Yeah, so I think some of the takeaways from me were, I did do a thing of it, but I'm going to try and keep it a bit simpler. So I think what we learned was that there's a lot of ad hoc things going on across Australia and the world that go under the guise of universal design, but I still think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to improve how it's interpreted and applied in real life. So there are a lot of different projects that I think that we could investigate further, and there was, I'm trying to find where it was, Inclusive Towns project. And when we're talking about the business grants, I think that maybe we could talk a bit around or look into that a little bit more. I don't actually like what their outcome is, but I think that some of their processes we might be able to learn from a little bit in regards to making businesses more accessible. So what they did was hire people with disabilities to go around to local businesses and talk about some accessibility, highlight some accessibility issues, and they created these action plans, and then businesses, I think, had 4 things to implement over the course of a few months, and then they went back at the end of it to see whether or not they'd been changed and whether or not, you know, what the outcomes were. And then they also have created this website that's got, you can list businesses that are accessible and employers that are accessible, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a project that we could probably look at some of the outcomes that they achieved through that, and how they engaged with businesses, I think was probably the best learning. Also, I think it's really important to follow through a bit more on projects. So one of the talks was around post-occupancy evaluation and how people are using the space once it's been built, and whether or not there's any learnings from that, and what some pain points might be, what was done well and what was not done well. So I think that we should do that with some of the projects that we're doing. There was talk around grants and procurement and things like that, and when businesses are being awarded contracts, instead of being told that it needs to be universally designed, they're actually asking questions like, this is our universal design statement, what are you doing to, or what are you doing to ensure that this is universally designed, or something like that. So they're asking questions rather than being a blanket statement. They're asking people to actually address what they're doing with regards to universal design. What's another point? There was a project that was done with the City of Bunbury, and people with disabilities worked on this project, and they were with regards to accessibility in the City of Bunbury, and they created this executive team that sat on projects, that the capital projects and things like that. And even that ended in disaster because they had 2 separate stages of a project, and they abandoned the second stage, which was a stage that had all the universal design access to this tower, this lookout tower embedded into it. So once they weren't going to go ahead with stage 2, there was no way for people with mobility issues to access the lookout tower. And I think that that is a real wake-up call, that unless you start changing the way you design things and building things in at every stage of universal design, and having a bit more accountability, I think, and transparency around things, you still are going to get the same sort of outcomes. And I think that there was also examples around, there was an architect, I think it was, that was teaching students, and they were going into meeting with retirement village builders and things like that. And they were meeting with the managers, they were meeting with all sorts of people, but not the end users that would use the product. And it was the same with, I think, a nursing home thing. So I think that what I took away from that is that you've got to change the way you actually do things and implement things to be more inclusive along every aspect of that, so that you're not creating universal designs if you're not asking the users what they need and want throughout that stage. And I think that's all I can remember that I was going to talk about. But I think that there was a lot of useful discussions that were had there. And I think that one of the things that that I can't remember his name, sorry, I had something all prepared and I've had such a busy morning that I've got my computer not opened up with everything, but it was around Vic Health and their processes. And one of the designs that they talked about was a Creswick nursing home, and showing how that connection to nature was a big feature of one of their designs. Because when we talk about universal design, we don't often have really good examples that have great outcomes. And I think the other thing that really resonated with me is that, having been in a nursing home, you're surrounded by high fences and you lose any connection with the outside world whatsoever. And that was a dementia ward, I think, with this nursing home, and they had floor to ceiling windows that had views out onto bushland and things like that. So there was that sense of connection to nature and calming and not feeling as locked in. I think that was a really good example of universal design in my mind. So, yeah, Belinda, have you got some takeaways?
I was thinking about universal design, sort of the people in nursing homes, they're always at a much lower level and people in wheelchairs are always sitting lower. So the window design for a residential place may not suit everyone. If they're not standing up, they won't see the same thing. So floor to ceiling windows, I think, makes a huge difference to the view that you would get. So I see how it would make a difference. Not so much just you don't have to see out a window, but it makes it a lot better. But I was going to ask a question. Sorry, I saw the list of proposed universal design standards in one of the emails, and it says to be developed by Access and Architecture. Is that the name of a consulting, like an architecture firm? Because I Googled it and up came Architecture and Access.
Yeah, I got it around the wrong way.
So what's how are they involved? Like does the DAC what do they have that we requested a design from them?
So Cardinia used Architecture and Access to develop some standards a few years ago, Cardinia Council. So that's why I've engaged them, because I've already done this, and we've already sort of started the process of drafting that list, and then I attached the first example that they've given us, which is for doors.
The doors, yeah.
But there's going to be like 20 or 20, I can't remember how many are on that list.
I see the list of all the things, parking and drop off and all that stuff.
And we can discuss whether there's anything missing or anything like that. But the plan is that Architecture and Access will have 2 meetings with members of the DAC and other people that are involved to develop those standards. So similar to the accessible business grants, I'm keen to get expressions of interest from any of you that might be interested in working a little bit more closely with those standards, because there's going to be a lot of work involved in reviewing them, and I'm not expecting them to be perfect the first time around. But
I was looking at their website, interested, because that level of just specifying things is quite involved. And I was looking at the door pull. It was like 2 kilograms of how much of force is required to open a sprung door, and that was something that I found was difficult. When I was in hospital, they gave me a walker to use, and even in the hospitals, their doors were so heavily sprung that I couldn't get through with a walker. So I discarded the walker in order to actually go through a doorway. And I just wanted to, it's kind of that I'm interested in how are their specifications tested, I guess, to make sure they're in fact accurate.
That's a big conversation and one that we're not going to perfect this year. But yeah, I guess the plan is that those standards will contain the minimum standards as per the building code. Then over and above, dependent on what feedback we can get from people such as yourselves with the lived experience. And Lorraine's going to help me talk to PACE about older people's experience, and AJ and I have spoken to other people in my team about gender being considered, LGBTI, hopefully different cultures, so that it has the potential to be improved upon over time with all of these different perspectives, asking for over and above the minimum.
Just wondering if, like, the Mornington Peninsula being coastal with wind and other things, catching doors and other things like that are going to be specific, that don't actually have similar problems to the city and residential, because of the fact that you might be on a cliff top opening into a cafe, and 2 kilograms isn't enough to keep the door closed against the wind.
Sure.
And I'm just
Yeah, and look,
I guess I'm curious. Sorry, I might
the
be
approach of standards is problematic, and a lot of universal design protagonists don't like that approach because they think that it should be based on the principles. But I guess the challenge that I have is that, you know, I agree with having a principles approach, but we've got a lot of project managers and other people delivering capital works who probably don't have a deep enough understanding of the minimum standards, let alone anything over and above, and also need some quite black and white, here's what you do, here's what you don't do,
Absolutely.
types of instructions. So gradually over time, I would like to see, that we move towards understanding how to apply the principles. But as an interim, I think we need that set of standards and to make them as good as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dee, have you got a question?
It was more of a comment, actually. I remember watching a video a while ago, now it's a YouTube video, and what they did in the situations where they couldn't immediately adapt and be accessible was you could walk up to the front, and there was a button to the side that you could push, and it had like a braille marking beside it and everything, and that would give an intercom so that the person that was inside could then come and open the door, or if you needed assistance in that space. Mm-hmm. And I thought at the time that was very, very intuitive, because that was many years ago.
Mm-hmm. It's just a bit of a workaround.
Can I just give a bit of feedback from my perspective?
Yeah, I was going to say, yep.
So firstly, it was an interesting time for me because I actually had just come out of hospital the week before, and I had 3 broken ribs. And so I actually ended up having lived experience myself, trying to get around on public transport and going up and down stairs and all sorts of things when I wasn't feeling the best. So it sort of put a whole different perspective on how I was dealing with that conference. So anyway, having said that, it's interesting, quite a few of the comments that have come up and some of the things that you've been saying, Simon, and so on, that were really reflected in some of the comments made by the speakers. And one of them being that accessibility was different for everybody and can be quite subjective, and that's why it's really, really important to have that diversity of views that you were talking about, Virginia, across all of those different areas. So that was something that was really highlighted. The keynote speaker who opened the conference was from the Victorian Health Building Authority, and he actually gave quite a powerful speech, I thought. And a couple of his key points were that the importance of embedding the principles of universal design upstream, and that it's really, so that whole idea that it's really coming from the top. And then he also talked about the fact that the buildings themselves, although they're important, aren't everything, and that actually they can shape behavior, but in the end it's up to the staff behavior. So he gave some examples about the fact that you might have to be operating in a building that is older and doesn't have all of the access and inclusion principles already in place. But if the staff are trained enough to actually say, okay, well, unfortunately, we don't have this, or we don't have that, or this ramp's not great, this is what we can do about it. And I thought that was a really important thing, and maybe feeds back to what we were talking about with the grants, that maybe we can't offer people enough money to actually make physical changes, but they could make behavioural changes through staff training and awareness. And I think that that's something that was really important. One of the other things that was really good, there was a lady from the director, she's the director of open spaces at the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment, and they had introduced this whole kind of playground program. And what I thought was really nice about it was that they approached everything that they did with 3 questions in mind. Can I get there? Can I play? And can I stay? And I thought those were just fantastic. They'd sort of distilled it all down to just those key means of actually assessing everything that they did in terms of the design of the playgrounds, and that was I thought and what they showed us as the result. They had this fantastic video of these playgrounds that they had developed, and that was a really good presentation for me. I thought that was excellent. Yeah, so those are my key points that I've got.
Didn't they have a fourth point, Belinda? I think it was, do I feel welcome? I think it was that.
Or can I connect?
Can I connect? That's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm miswriting that down. Sorry.
No, but like I think that was the fourth key point, is that we can build accessible places and we can stay at accessible places, but if we don't feel welcome and not connecting with community in those spaces, then they haven't, they've failed a bit. And I think that one of the real good things about that program was, apparently in New South Wales they have the Premier's directive or something, is it? And that one of the directives was to do with open spaces, I think, that year. And it really got a lot of traction in making things more accessible for all and things like that. So I think that reinforces the top-down approach that.
Well, there was, and I've forgotten his name, but there was the person that spoke about the smart cities across the world and used Mexico City as an example. They were looking at it from a digital perspective, I think, initially, but the idea was that they had determined that the reasons for cities not being smart were mainly, number one, due to a lack of leadership.
Yeah.
And secondly, not the right policies, and thirdly, a lack of awareness and commitment. So yeah, tying in again to that sort of top-down approach.
And the keynote speaker also made that point about often it's not a lack of solutions as to why there's not better accessibility, it's a lack of leadership. And that was a good point too, so yeah. Okay. Virginia, do you want to add anything to?
Look, time's up, really. I don't want to take too much time. I was just hoping to really quickly run through this, which I showed some of you the other day when we met with the director. So can you see the 80-20 screen there? So most of you have seen this bell curve, which says that, we often design for the average person, but there's a lot of people on the margins. And if we design for those people, we create a better result for everybody. And so at the Universal Design Conference, I ran a workshop asking people to think about all the processes that go, this was a house, but that go into developing something as seemingly simple as a playground or a toilet block. And I asked people to think of all of the legislation, council staff or teams, community groups that might be interested, contractors and anything else. And so they came up, with a list, and then I collated them, and you can see these colours at the top. So for a playground, we identified there are 28 different local government plans, policies and strategies that might influence the decisions that are made around designing and building a playground. So that just, to me, what that shows you, and then 48 different staff members or teams, 25 different community groups, 35 different contractors. I'll just quickly show you, this is the list if you want to try and read any of those. Whoops. It just speaks to the complexity in local government, and I suppose it's the journey that I've been on with the rest of the DAC, I'll stop sharing now, around trying to unpack and understand all of those. I started off looking at opportunities to embed universal design, and I think it still is. All those things are opportunities, right from being in the planning scheme to being in the contracts to, including it in our playground strategy. But then also there's a bigger question about, why have we got so many strategies and plans, and why don't they talk to each other better, and how can we make it easier to build and you know, do better services. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly share the findings of that workshop. So I thought they were quite amazing. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it does look like quite complicated. I think I pointed out the other day that I think that council staff don't tend to look at their own policies, let alone other team policies, so it can get
And you can see why, like if you have to be across all of those 28 policies just to put in a toilet or a playground, yeah, I'm not excusing it, but I'm just saying it seems like an overly complicated process. Anyway.
That's why you guys get paid and we don't. Cheeky comment there, but yeah. Okay, so the next thing I guess we want to know is where are we at with the policy and what the implementation phase?
Yeah, okay, so look, so the policy has expanded from the built environment to events, outdoor spaces, and then information and communication, customer experience, community engagement, and recently we've been having a few conversations about could it even be applied to services. So I'm not going to let that discussion slow down the progress of getting the policy written. I think services is something that we could probably add in the future if we don't, if it's not something that can quickly be done now. But so far, what I'm finding is that meeting with different internal teams that have responsibility for these areas, because I did the same thing in the development of the disability inclusion plan, it could be because we worked so hard on that disability inclusion plan that there's a lot more receptivity to take on these UD principles. But I've just found that people are really open to it, really willing to get their heads around it, and the fact that we're developing these standards is going to be really helpful to the project teams that are trying to, you know, build things for us, but also the events team, the customer experience manager. You know, they're all really excited about the principles and how applicable they are to multiple different things. So yeah, we're planning to go to exec next month, and then council briefing after that, and then it'll need to go to a council meeting, go on public exhibition, and hopefully be all finished by November. But we've already embarked on the standards and other things, regardless of the policy being finalised.
So I guess the question is, what is DAC's opportunity to feed back into the policy process?
So before I get it ready to go to council, I'm happy to reshare where it's at and get your feedback. I might not be able to take it I might need feedback before the July meeting, so it might have to be done via email. But then the development of the standards is something that you'll all be invited to attend meetings with Architecture and Access to look at. Yeah, there'll be an initial meeting, and then they'll go away and do some work, and then they'll share it with us, and we can probably review it ourselves, and then have another meeting with them before they're finalised. And if we need more meetings, we can add them.
We're really struggling for time. Does anyone have to leave on 3 o'clock? John and Debbie and Ben. Okay, so I guess can you send out policy or invite, or will we arrange a meeting, then people who are interested can attend to provide the discussion?
Sure. Yeah, I'll send it to everybody, and whoever's able to attend, yeah, I'll follow that up.
Great.
Virginia, can that be via calendar invite?
Yeah, I might. I was just thinking, we don't want to take any more time, but I'll send an email asking people for their best times so that we can, like, you know, try and get maximum people, and then I'll send a calendar invite.
Thank you. Now, the last item on the agenda, and we probably haven't got time to really discuss it, but it was just an opportunity that came up. So for those of you who don't know, I'm on the Victorian Disability Advisory Council, and we had a meeting with the Accessible Public Transport Committee just this last week gone, and there was mention around the poor public transport in regional areas. And I know Milninja Peninsula is not a regional area, but it was a focus of the Accessible Transport Committee, and whether or not we could write a letter to them and get buy-in with that with regards to better transport on the peninsula through that means, rather than going through general public transport means. So I guess it's a matter of, should we write a letter, and can we give evidence as to why it's needed, and get that sent via the Mayor in order to improve public transport. It's just an avenue that we could explore.
I'd be in favour of that happening, but like a step made, with the improvement of the Frankston to Porty bus service, and there's been a couple of other bus services that have been improved. Nothing on the Western Port side, but on the Port Phillip Bay side, there's certainly been an improvement in services about to start.
I think it fits with Council's own objective for better transport for the peninsula as well. So it fits with their current strategy. So coming from the Mayor probably would be a good idea.
My only question is, will it be accepted? The Shire is sort of half Melbourne metropolitan and half rural. If this is a rural strategy, will they even consider?
I think all it does,
then absolutely from the Mayor. Perfect.
It will highlight the issue around that we are considered metro, but we have rural issues.
Facilities.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you.
Yep, John.
Yeah, I think if you read the report on the future of Stony.
Sorry, John, we can't hear you.
Improve services down the peninsula with it as well. Sure, I think it should, and that was a business case done, outside of government, or they outsourced it, and that's got some really good points about where transport will go on the peninsula.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. Sorry. That's all right, Debbie. Maybe we can carry this one over to the next meeting. So, or we can, Claire and then Dee. Oh, you've got to go, Claire. Yep. Bye. Dee.
I'm just wondering if there's any leverage or any evidence we could use from the Better Buses campaign, where we went and we were at the golf club, and there was all sorts of people giving feedback, including school kids, youth on the peninsula and all that sort of stuff, as well as members of the DAC that went and private people. So is there anything on there that we could maybe even leverage off?
I'm not sure of that, but I just know that it came up as a big issue around when we were doing the DAC interviews for new members, was the lack of transport. And I figure that if we can get the leverage through the Accessible Transport Action Committee, we can then sort of take a different tack, and it fits in with all that. I think it's a DIP action as well to improve public transport on the peninsula. So it's just one of those quick wins, so forth. But as we're well aware that we don't hold much hope that things will change very quickly. But I think sometimes you just got to try with those quick wins to try and get some traction on issues.
I mean, the Better Buses campaign was a pretty intensive campaign. I think that's where the data was collected, Dee. I think it was for that campaign. So, and I mean, I think the Chris Brain, as the local member of Parliament, has also been advocating for better transport. So to join with both of those campaigns and to push accessibility just makes sense, really.
I do remember when we used to push it too.
Lorraine?
Yes, just quickly, I don't know where things are up to, but from what I understand is that the bus that was going to come from the Peninsula up to Frankston Hospital, that's well and good. But I believe that they were going to drive along Peninsula Link, and I think from memory, if I've got it right, from Dramana. So that cuts out a lot of people who want to access that bus to get to the hospital. So I don't know where action around that is at, but that was a real concern, not just to me, but to many people, I think.
Virginia, did we ever get any follow-up from the letter that we drafted?
No, I haven't actually finished that, Dee. I'm really sorry.
See you, John.
Bye, John.
I think it probably might be best for us to check in also, because the alliances, as everyone mentioned, is really important. The Positive Ageing Steering Committee, the Ageing Well Summit also identified public transport, the better buses. There is strength in unity in numbers. And our traffic team is currently working on the integrated transport strategy, which picks up all modes of transport for all users. So it's probably touching base to see what the most effective lens is. Is that what you're after, Karen, or is it just like
No, it was just specifically targeting the accessible transport committee to feed back in, so they feed back to government that it's an access issue on the peninsula, not just a problem peninsula-wide with bad transport, but trying to get that buy-in from a perspective of accessibility issue. So
yeah, and that's where the Ageing Summit was as well, because a lot of the elderly have trouble with access and things like that as well.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a point of inclusion. So I'm just trying to work out what's the best way for us, or a collective, to get access to great bus services as much as the peninsula as fast as possible, and not trying to, or working on the avenues that are already there, and politically, and as Michelle said, with a lot of data behind it. I can have a chat and sound it out with the traffic team, and I sit on the Positive Ageing Steering Committee, so I can have that discussion with Helen, or AJ might be able to grab that from last year's summit, I think.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of advocacy happening around improvements to transport. So, I mean, it's really the opportunity. We don't want to miss this opportunity either, do we, Karen? And sometimes, if we've kind of alluded, we do overcomplicate things. And if it's as simple as kind of getting the voice of the DAC represented and shared through this platform, I think there's merit in exploring that. But as Adrian says, it's really important to ensure that we're not missing those other pieces that are also doing similar advocacy. So
I don't plan on making this a huge project or anything like that. I just think that a simple letter, and that gives our concerns to a higher level advocacy group based on accessibility and representing people with disabilities on the peninsula. That's just that way to feed in to that level of government and not have to do a lot of work in the process, if that makes sense. So it's
It does. Can I just make a comment? I mean, what it does probably highlight is that DAC perhaps might need to be consulted in part of that transport strategy. I mean, maybe that's on the agenda, but sometimes we drop out of some of these processes. So I think it would be this would help flag that perhaps DAC does need to be consulted. So accessibility is integrated into it.
That? Who's leading that?
That's the traffic and transport team.
Yep.
Yeah, but which
so
officer?
Tom probably.
Yeah, Doug Bradbrook and Matt McQuinn, I think.
Yeah, well, if it's Doug, yeah.
But it's a whole host of things, I understand.
So
and I'm not quite sure how far down the path it is. It's been going for some time, and as we know, transport's got so many different modes and there's so many different things to the puzzle. But yeah, if we can, like you said, Karen and AJ, if we can hit another state government department that can have a conversation with another one, you might get better traction because you're dealing with different ministers that are singing the same song.
So Adrian, can I put down for you to follow up?
Yeah, I'll chase that up. Yeah, definitely.
Ask and the traffic and transport team on that strategy. Thank you.
So it sounds like, Karen, we vote for it.
Okay, we're all in favour of investigating further a written letter. Yep, with regards to
Karen,
that.
is there a turnaround? Like, do we need to have this submitted by a particular date that might give us a bit of pressure to get it resolved, or?
Do we want to set a date? Oh, what's that, Belinda? Do you need to go, or is that
okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, my question was more around, is there like a cut-off date from submissions? Do they need to have it by?
Oh, there's not submissions or anything like that. It was just a point that was raised, and I thought
Okay.
I just saw it as a good opportunity to
okay,
get in
cool.
there and flag it, because I think that it represents that other issue, isn't it, where we're considered to be metro, but we have regional kind of transport services. And
if I could be so bold, I would suggest that we just go ahead and do it. If that consents to it, that we just go ahead and do it. Strike all the irons hot, and we can always improve things later. But at least if you register it with the Victorian Advocacy Group, it does highlight it straight away.
Yeah. So,
and we can follow up on those other actions as well, but we don't have to wait to talk to other groups, I think.
I guess probably my point was that maybe we need to sort of highlight what routes are the pain points, perhaps, or like we even discussed. I just can't believe this is why something goes to Claire with a state disability plan and 20 years in the making. And it's like, why aren't we got more on demand? So there is an on demand transport trial going on somewhere in Victoria at the moment, and it's like, why aren't we further ahead with our public transport options? You know, in 2021, it's kind of amazing that we're still sticking with the old double bus method type thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's an industry that's very slow to move on adaptive things. I had a conversation with the transport team a while ago, specifically Doug, about on-demand bus services as part of the integrated and better opportunities. The hard part is also the financial, not for us or not for the community, it's for the businesses that do those. Often think they're not as viable as what they are, but they're actually, with all the data now, starting to prove that they are viable. They actually return a really good service and give good customer service and actually are viable. So I'll check in as part of that as the public transport plan, the integrated transport plan, because there's different modes, there's different service providers. It's not just Ventura anymore doing those things.
Okay,
the other thing, Karen, I guess, would be to explore for people that have got accessible buses or accessible transport, whether or not that you can get access to it after hours when it's not being used.
Yeah, that's correct. It's a hard one. I'm doing it currently at the moment, mapping 15 to 20 minute neighbourhoods across the peninsula, both on Port Phillip side and Western Port, by different modes of transport, and trying to look at that as a place-making, a place perspective. And some of the bus routes, to even identify where they are, what the timing is and so forth, and finishing off at certain hours and not doing it on Saturday and Sunday, or taking 45 minutes to get from Merricks and it goes via Crib Point to get to Hastings. And then you've got ones that'll take, 15 minutes. And they're the state government. It's not something we're providing. It's Public Transport Victoria. And they base their operations on the volume of traffic, not necessarily, or the volume of people moving, not necessarily on the user's independent need. That's a hard one. So I'll check on that too, so we're not double dipping. I'm pretty sure they'll have all the public transport routes mapped. They'll have the frequency of operation and the service providers. So then we've got a little bit more of an insight. Would that help? Is that the angle you're looking for as well, Karen? And
yeah, I think that just a general letter saying, we need better public transport is probably not going to do much, but sort of if we've got an idea of, I'm just talking out loud here, I haven't really thought much, but if we know where the areas are, the pain points perhaps that we can advocate for a bit better.
I know the Positive Ageing Steering Committee a couple of years ago also targeted letters to Uber to try and increase the age-friendly and accessibility to a service as well. It's not just public transport as we saw traditionally now.
No, that's right.
Other modes of transport.
Yeah. And affordability of that, and whether or not.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And I guess that's where I was heading towards a holistic approach with the community as well, to see if anybody else is out there that can help provide alternatives for transport.
Yeah, and then you can play the real numbers game as a commercial viability and economic angle as well. The more numbers, the more people demanding and needing those services makes it more attractive to fill them, and obviously the political side, more political strength in the debate.
Yeah, it's almost a catch-22. We need people to make the demands, but the people won't know to make the demands if they don't know it's there.
That's right. Oh, and it's not reliable, so we won't use it, so we continue down here. Or yeah, it's a cultural change, like many things, universal design as well. It's that cultural change your perceptions, use, need, and the trending, and then it'll just become a standard practice that it's there. But to get there, champions like this group and people in it keep raising the flag for it. So I'll check in on those things. That's my 2 cents on the transport side. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm reading the Accessible Transport Advisory Committee has actually changed its focus and title since it used to be the Public Transport Accessibility Committee or something like that. And so they're now looking at a more holistic approach, like it includes all forms of transport that they're trying to focus in on, not just the standard public transport. So, okay.
So I put an action for us to work on a draft letter, Karen.
Yeah, I think so.
And follow up on our 1D. Apologies.
Thank you. A lot of heart went into that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm fading. I don't know if I can take much more.
So you're working at an awful fast pace, lady.
My brain hurts.
Yeah, I want to wind this up too. I want to go just hibernate in front of the heater. I think it's dinner time. Okay, so thank you all for a great meeting, and our next meeting will be on the 17th of July, and it looks like we'll have Zach Grimes as our guest speaker with regards to the Sorrento Master Plan. So thank you everyone for your attendance today, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
And that was a small agenda.
No.
Yeah.
Topics, big topics.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Okay. Oh my gosh, I've got another meeting. I'm going to go. I was going to stay and have a quick chat, but I'll let you go. Bye, Mary.
Yeah, see you, Virginia.
Mary.
Bye, Mary.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye, Karen.
Okay, see you later.
See ya.